Welcome, listeners from coast to coast and worldwide. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Friday, February 13th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, we've got a great program for you tonight. A lot of key, critical information to discuss tonight. We are going to be talking about what's propelling the headlines, what's important to focus upon and what is not. And there is a whole lot of stuff that's not important that is really saturating the news headlines. It's hiding what's really critical. And I've got to tell you, please listen carefully tonight. We've got a lot of news. Now you're listening to the only show where such news is presented to you in 3D, looking far beyond the headlines, the misdirection, the misinformation, to bring you the news behind the news. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the internet at Homeland Security. Well, I'm sorry, at Boy, sometimes old habits are hard to break, aren't they? Hagmann.com. That's Hagmann.com. We're simulcast by the Christian United Broadcasting Network. They're tuning us in at the Hagmann.com. Want to say a very special hello, if you know what I mean, to a listener in Mexico. We have eyes on you, sir. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your belief and trust in us, listeners all around the world. Thank you so very much. May I remind everybody, this is so great. Tonight's broadcast is sponsored by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great tasting, wholesome snacks right to your door. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas with feet in them. No, you don't have to do that. You can forget the vending machine. You can forget the aisles in the 7-Elevens, the convenience stores, the grocery stores. Forget about all that. Begin to snack much smarter with wholesome, delicious treats. Hey, you've got cranberry medley. You've got dark cocoa almonds. Whether you're in the mood for a crunch or a little sweet or a tang, they've got it. So you can support this broadcast by ordering a free, that's right, free NatureBox sampler box at naturebox.com/CFPradio, naturebox.com/CFPradio, or simply go to Hagmann.com. Scroll all the way down right to the left of Prepare for Persecution. Required reading for the Hagmann Report. That's right. Right to the left of that is NatureBox. Click on that. It'll take you to our own special place on NatureBox. They're friends. What a great company. What a great product. That's naturebox.com/CFPradio. I want to welcome everybody again. Thank you for taking your time to join us tonight, Joe.
Yeah.
Welcome. I got good news for the listeners. You hear that clicking, that Morse code in the background?
I was just going to open with that. The noise that is coming from our headphones for the last 2 weeks, it's actually from the set my dad has.
Oh, my goodness.
It is an internal issue. It is not anything that we can do or fix.
Now, some might say they're marbles. Those are the marbles in my head, okay?
And we hear it too, so it's just as aggravating and frustrating on our end. But the good news is that new equipment should be here, and we won't be hearing the rattling, the tapping, whatever it is that you hear coming across your airways that sounds like somebody's inside the microphone. It will be fixed.
I went to do some editing on an audio file, and I thought, my goodness, I can't stand to listen to this.
Then you should see us in here, because the more movement we have, or you have, the more it clicks. Sometimes when you just move from talking, it clicks, and seeing him trying to sit so still and not move, and it's pretty funny.
Oh, it's unnatural. It really is. And we have actually used so much duct tape and electrical tape and string. Yes, string. A few rubber bands. There are several. So anyway, having said all of that, my goodness, we're blessed really to be able to get the equipment in and have it delivered on a Saturday and have it installed. It's not it's not easy.
A story about it,
yeah.
Headphone clicking gone.
Well, secretly we're actually programming minds. You see, this is a secret mind control, folks. You got to understand now. We're working for the controlled opposition, and what you're hearing is our secret signals. but only if you've got the decoder ring. Oh, see now what's going to happen, and you know what's going to happen. Joking around, that's going to be. I'm not going to say anymore. Anyway, a lot of good information, or a lot of important information to get into. Joe's got just a ton of research. I'm glad he's here. I'm going to make an announcement right now. Joe wasn't expecting this. Joe's been fighting an issue here with his physical. He's got some physical problems, and we both do. I'm fat, and he's fat too.
I'm overweight. Yeah. I gained
no, it's not
50
overweight.
pounds
We're fat
in like a year without changing eating habits or really anything.
You've got some issues, but Joe's going to have surgery next Wednesday, and he's going to be out.
It's minor surgery. It is
relatively minor. Yeah.
Having a root of a cyst removed out of my back, which is a problem that just started about a month and a half ago.
It's actually pressing against his spine and the sacral area. It's that's all we're going to say. But he's going to be just gone for that Wednesday. He's been dealing with these symptoms and having minor surgical procedures done. Now it's going to be okay. We're going to take care of the problem for good.
So Wednesday I will not be here. But we have a great lineup for you guys next week.
I volunteered to do the surgery. I did, and here's the thing: a little whiskey, and maybe some camphor on a cloth. I'm joking around, but Joe, sorry, I do this to you all the time, right. Don't I? I just like. But Wednesday, I've got to tell you, Wednesday night we're going to have a very special program. I talk to Steve Quayle at least once a day now, and I have for quite a while, but. Wednesday, folks, him and Tim Alberino.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about Tim and if he has any updates where he's been and when he's coming back on. And
major announcement Wednesday.
Steve and Tim Alberino. Well, let's go back to the beginning. Monday next week, the 16th, we will be joined by Russ Dizdar. Tuesday, we will be joined by Stan Deo. Also, during the day, my dad will be on the Power Hour, guest hosted by Ted Breuer from 10 to 11 Eastern. Wednesday, I'll be absent, but my dad will be here with Steve and Tim Alberino. The 19th, we'll be joined by Jonathan Kahn, author of The Harbinger and Shemitah, also will be at the Orlando Prophecy Conference. Followed by Friday, we'll be joined by Dan Goodwin. He's another speaker or presenter at the Prophecy and the News Conference in Orlando. And we will also be on Pastor Paul's show Friday from 1 to 3.
And next Friday, I'll be interviewed by Al Sharpton on his program. No. Boy, can you imagine that? Wouldn't that be fun? I don't even want to joke about that. There are one question I have, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't know if this is a regional or a local or a regional issue or if this is widespread. My wife, during when she was working here at the office today, she left about, I think it was about 12:30, 12:45 this afternoon Eastern time, went to the post office to mail some things and to pick some things up. And at the post office, signs all across the post office were nationwide system down, cash only, stamps, cash only, and you can only purchase stamps with cash. She went to the window. You couldn't mail a package. You couldn't mail packages. You could only buy stamps with cash. And this was at the big post office. What do they call those? The regional mail sorting facilities. And she asked, and the person behind the counter said, "We don't know anything, except that our entire system nationwide is down." Have you heard about this? Can anyone provide us any information about this? It's not that we're lazy and we didn't ask, but when my wife, bottom line, when my wife thought to tell me about this in detail, it was already past the time when I could make any phone calls beyond the inquiries already made. So Anybody know anything about this? Let us know. Just send an email to Hagmann and Hagmann. Go to our website, hagmannandhagmann.com, and just go ahead and click on the contact us form. We want to find out.
I got a message. I got to relay to you from Kevin, who's one of the people who helped us put together the app. He wants me to tell you that your joke was not funny, and he wants me to tell you that on the air.
Which joke was that? Attempted humor?
I'm not sure, but I would assume either the one that doing surgery on by yourself, or offering to do the surgery, or something that I missed. But
wow,
Kevin is he helped me with my new computer, get it.
Well, Kevin, well, I'll tell you what, Kevin. If you wouldn't make apps that require so much doggone personal information and invade people's privacy,
Al Sharpton.
Al Sharpton. Okay. Well, either way,
Kevin.
Yeah. All right. And the creators of the app, the Hagmann Hagmann app, they're good friends. They're good guys. I got to tell you, very good guys, good company, and it's a fantastic company, as a matter of fact. And Kevin is an extremely intelligent, extremely adept at IT things, and very good. But you're right, Kevin. Not funny at all. But anyway, but you know, it's Friday, right?
It is Friday.
We're allowed to do this. We're allowed to be. And also,
rules don't change based on weekdays, calendar days
don't.
Changing. So, but we can have a laid back, relaxed, and fun, informative show at the same time.
And if I sound so great, and I do, no, I'm just kidding. It's because of the restful, restorative sleep I've been getting on our Casper mattress. And I just want to bring this up again. This is unscripted, and yesterday was our first time out with Casper Mattress in terms of them being a sponsor of our program. And I got to tell you, sponsorship does help keep us on the air. It really does. But you do too, ladies and gentlemen. You folks do. You do the heavy lifting. The sponsors kind of help us in other ways in terms of, kind of with bandwidth and other issues that are far beyond what most people know, because we do have other venues and such. But anyway, bottom line is Casper Mattress. Just want to remind people, if you're in the market for a new mattress, and if you're not, you probably should be, because the difference it's made in my life, my wife's life, incredible. Just go to hagmannandhagmann.com, click on the even if you're not interested, click on the Casper Mattress link and take a look at what they've got. It's great stuff, man. And we want to thank them again for sponsoring us. But, Joe, you've got so many things to get into, and you hit something today. Well, you hit a number of things today that seem to be so nefarious. And really, the one thing that you did say about DHS, that's...
Yeah, got a number of reports here.
Wow.
Okay, let's start here. Homeland Security to be put in charge of information sharing. This from USA Today. President Obama will announce a new executive order on the sharing of cybersecurity threats and information at Friday's Cybersecurity Summit at Stanford University, the White House said. Now, let me jump over to the White House website, because I did not find anything earlier where they listed any new executive orders, and I'll check right now. What is today? 13th. Here we go. Executive order promoting private sector cybersecurity information sharing. So the executive order is up. And let me go to the rest of the article before we get to the executive order.
What is up now?
The executive order.
Okay.
It is executive order promoting private sector cybersecurity information sharing. And let me get the article, and we'll hit the executive order right after that. It says, most importantly, the Silicon Valley, the president's proposal is expected to cement the role of the Department of Homeland Security rather than the NSA, or National Security Agency, as the government lead for information sharing with the private sector. Hopefully, the rules will prohibit the use of the information shared being used for surveillance, said Greg Najomi, a senior counsel with the Center for Democracy and Technology. Given the anger and anxiety that resulted from revelations by Edward Snowden about the extent of NSA surveillance, knowing that Homeland Security is in charge may calm concerns about Valley companies. Many tech companies have dealt with an extensive pushback from their customer base in the United States and overseas over the issue of privacy and the protection of the information that they hold. The intent of the executive order is to create a process for establishing rules of the road on information sharing between the private sector and the government. This would be in the form of a hub-and-spoke system where companies would share information with the government, which would then send it back out to other companies. However, the President's order wouldn't provide for protection from liability for the companies doing the sharing. Now, this is important to understand. Again, the President's executive order will not provide protection from liability for the companies doing the sharing. Going on, that's why it does not happen now, said Alan Ladin, a security analyst at the technology research company at Gardner. There's no meaningful intelligence sharing because of all the lawyers. There's always the threat of lawsuits, she said. It goes on to say the only way to make information sharing possible is to create legal safe harbors where companies can disclose what they know without putting themselves at legal risk, she said. That will require congressional action. Unilateral, top-down solutions will not solve America's cyber problems. Corey Fritz, the spokesman for the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, said. Instead of the executive order, he said Obama should support cybersecurity bills passed by the House in the last Congress, meaning CISPA. Mm-hmm. The executive order is rather long. And
I'm looking at it right now. I've got it up here on the screen.
Okay.
And
if you have a jump on it.
Well, yeah.
It starts out by reading, in order to address cyber threats to public health and safety, national security, economic security of the United States, private companies, nonprofits, executive departments and agencies, and other entities must be able to share information related to cybersecurity risk and incidents and collaborate to respond in as close to real time as possible.
Joe, let me stop you for a second here because it seems like we were, during our conversation pre-show, or the show prep, is this related to the fund, or is this related to the DHS with respect to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because it's related, it's also this is related to the Presidential Directive 21, also a Department of Homeland Security Directive, PPD 21, and Executive Order 13636 issued February 12th of 2013, improving critical infrastructure and cybersecurity. It's related to, this is related to the Telecommunications Act of 1934. This has a lot to do with what we're going to see in the coming months and years, if we have that long, with the mobile medical health, the mobile banking, and the RFID chip, and the technological, what they call security and cybersecurity infrastructure is the collective information of you, your social security number, your histories, your likes, dislikes, all the data mining that has been done on each and every American citizen, your bank accounts. What they're doing is incorporating all this information into databases, electronically storable information into these databases that will be sold via private company to other private companies or shared by private companies with the government, who in turn will share this information with other private companies. And as we read in the article, it talks about the liability factor of sharing other people's private information not being backed up by laws in the executive order, not stopping the people from being able to file class action lawsuits against having their private information shared illegally. So it's leaving the door open for lawsuits, or FOIA requests at least, to begin lawsuits, which I have a feeling, we haven't read through this executive order, I don't think it will leave those loopholes in there.
Well, by the looks of it, as a matter of fact, they've deleted, deleted certain sections. Not deleted, not redacted or deleted from view, but for example, Section 201, subsection F is deleted in its entirety. And if you go back to that, what you're saying is absolutely correct. For example, well, Section 201E is redesignated as 201F.
Don't you like how they take the laws and definitions and titles and turn around and say, okay, like at the end it says, it goes, Section 7 goes through definitions, and it says, A, critical infrastructure information has the meaning given from Section 212 number 3 of the Critical Information Infrastructure Act of 2002.
And you got to have your string and your index cards kind of connecting all of these together. The NCCIC, we have to pay attention to this. The ISAO Standards Organization. These are very important, not just acronyms, but very important departments and very important aspects of the executive order. What this executive order means, and we're trying to, or at least I've been trying to simplify it. And Joe, you had a pretty simple explanation of it. This promoting private sector cybersecurity information sharing. Just consider the name. Just consider. Now, what is and ask yourself exactly what is the executive branch doing with respect to promoting, or why is he promoting private or involved in the private sector cybersecurity information sharing to begin with? Why would he? What's the motive for him to issue a decree in this venue? I guess that's my question. What's the motive behind this? What's he trying to do? Do you have any?
As I said, they are getting ready to classify information under categorical means. They are assessing the amount of information they have versus how many people are in the country and how much information they have on each person in that country. They are preparing and getting everything ready for moving everything to an electronic style RFID type system.
All right.
And this is how, I mean, it's basically information and data mapping, if that makes more sense.
Well, in a way, then, if you think about this at its most basic level, this is a surveillance of Internet activity.
Yes, and like it says in Section 7, Part C, that cybersecurity risk has a meaning given to in the term, or has a meaning given to it by Section 226A1 of the Homeland Security Act of 2012. Well, in the Homeland Security Act of 2012, a cybersecurity risk means a threat to any vulnerabilities of information or information systems and any related consequences caused by or resulting from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, degradation, disruption, modification, or destruction of information or information systems, including such related consequences caused by an act of terrorism. The term incident means an occurrence that actually or imminently jeopardizes without lawful authority the integrity, confidentiality, or availability of information in information systems. And I mean, I want to go on because this comes to a point here. B, it constitutes a violation or imminent threat of violation of the law, security policies, or procedures. And what they're saying here, so a cybersecurity risk means anything that threatens or
is perceived to threaten.
Anything that is a threat or a perceived threat to information or information systems and related consequences caused by or resulting from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, destruction of information or information systems.
But that word disclosure, okay, that's the key word there.
Just from this executive order, the Lois Lerner IRS email scandals would be a national security crime of treason based on this new executive order.
Wasn't it?
Well, yes, it was, but to back it up even further to prove the point, if it wasn't before, as we know that the information that was in those emails was pertinent to an investigation, an ongoing investigation into criminal actions taken by the administration and enforcement branch of the IRS. And those emails were subsequently, quote unquote, deleted, even though nothing's ever deleted permanently from the internet.
It's such a coincidence that those emails were just it's so sad.
The reason the executive order on improving critical infrastructure for cybersecurity and PDD 21 cybersecurity resilience, infrastructure resilience, This is all part and have been intertwined of parts of guidance documents from the FDA, from the World Health Organization, from the United Nations, in talking about the universal health care, universal mobile health, the electronic health information, and this is all part of exactly what this is. Even the internment and resettlement operations document, which talks about issuing you a ISO number, an internment serial number, which would be like your Social Security number after a time of erasing of the national borders via a world war or some kind of economic consolidation or country consolidation.
This reminds me.
But it incorporates so many. It incorporates the so many different. I mean, what do they need the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and Atomic Energy Act of 1954 amended for? What do they need the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 or the Homeland Security Classified National Security Information Program, the Insider Threat Program? All these different programs and laws listed and changed under this executive order under cybersecurity information sharing and changing of the cybersecurity information sharing. It's because they are consolidating all the information under the cybersecurity. We'll just call it the headline of cybersecurity, which is really real-time mobile electronic monitoring. And when you see the articles, the dishwasher is spying on you. Your TV can listen to what you're saying. Your laptop computer or camera, can watch you. All this is included and incorporated in it. I mean, when they say real time, they mean
real time.
As health will be given in real time through the RFID chips, your vitals like your blood pressure, cholesterol level, your sugar level, in real time right now they are gathering together all of the information on you, on your household, on your purchases, on your ability, resources.
But they can't do that now. I mean, when you're talking about for example, you threw in their blood sugar levels and state of
right
their
now
health.
They can't
do that.
But that will be one of the goals, and actually one of the points of benefits they will use when talking and implementing and rolling out the RFID chip, that it will be much safer for you as a patient to be intertwined with this mobile medical system. And me having this surgery coming up on Wednesday, this minor surgery, I've been going to a lot of procedures and appointments. I went to see an anesthesiologist today, went to see a doctor to get blood work the other day, and my new primary care physician gave me a pamphlet, which I think I still have in my pocket here, but it is how to hook up online with their offices and see the results of my blood work. Right. They give you an access code, and it's all turning to mobile health and mobile health records. And it was like the doctor put it like this: if there's something wrong with your blood work or something that we see that's a problem in your blood work, we'll call you. But otherwise, if you want to look at your numbers, you can't do it by talking to me. You got to go online.
Exactly. And remind me to we have to do that after the show. We'll take 2 minutes and hook you up there, only because well, that's sorry, we won't get into that, but they're forcing people to do that online. And the paperwork that you had, Joe, did they have you sign anything that would say that they would allow, or you would allow them to use or implant a chip?
No. Okay. Chip. I thought you were going to say use the information, taking out the personal information, but using the health information for other cases, using that information that was electronically inputted into the system, taking the personal aspect or element of the information out, using the information as
part of
to show other people who have further similar procedures or issues, basically to put together a model of risk and assessment.
Well, and folks, this is not new. A lot of this is not new. Now it's made new via the internet, but for a long time, and people, need to understand that, for example, in insurance underwriting, when you apply for a life or health insurance policy, specifically health insurance companies or life insurance companies, for the longest time, if you were, let's say, insured for whatever the company's, depending on your age and the amount, we'll say $1 million, a 35-year-old guy, $1 million, they would always pull a medical or have a medical done on you. And that information that used to be kept very private and destroyed, or kept with your file for a period of time and then destroyed afterwards. But now it's kept forever, and it's also, and this is kind of frightening, it's also they're building a genealogical database on everyone.
Yes, they have, and yes, they are. And I have that PDF from the military, which says as much. That I can pull up right here, but that's exactly what they're doing, building a DNA genealogical mapping system.
Yep.
And it talks about here in the executive order of privacy and civil liberty protections, it says agencies shall coordinate their activities under this order with senior agency officials for privacy and civil liberties and ensure appropriate protections for privacy and civil liberties are incorporated into such activities. Such protections shall be based upon the fair information practice principles and other privacy and civil liberty policies, principles, and frameworks as they apply to each agency's activities. Senior privacy and civil liberty officials for agencies engaged in activities under this order shall conduct assessments of their agency's activities and provide assessments to the DHS Chief's Privacy Officer and the DHS Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties for consideration and inclusion into the Privacy and Civil Liberty Assessment reports required under this executive order.
Man.
It goes on to say that the paragraph is amended. The National Industrial Security Program is further amended as follows by inserting the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 after the National Security Act of 1947. So it goes on to incorporate the Atomic Energy Act of 1954. It goes on to talk about the National Security Program shall provide for the protection of information classified under a new executive order, 13526 from December 29th of 2009. What they're doing is consolidating the information agencies, consolidating the information abilities and how they disseminate that information and gather that information is being consolidated, meaning to me that they have much of what the information that they already need, and now they're moving it where they need it. So for what purposes they plan on using it.
That's a fantastic report. Excellent reporting on this, Joe. I mean, absolutely excellent, beyond excellent. So what you're saying is we are a lot further down this road.
Their infrastructure for the RFID chip, whether they want to roll it out tomorrow or in 10 years, it's already there. Everything's already there. Just like the economic condition of our country, it mathematically is not able to be sustainable because of the mathematical impossibilities of paying back debt with money that we don't even have collectively.
Right.
It is a surety. It is
it's already
it will
a done
happen.
deal.
Right. It's just not a matter of if, but when and how.
Yeah, and you said that yesterday as well, but it's interesting because now we're not dealing with the infrastructure, as you said, has been built. It's there.
Yep.
Now is the only thing that's necessary or required is the timing. So, for example, just to be clear, and especially considering this executive order, and well, even the presidential PPD, the directive as well, what we're seeing is kind of a consolidation or a centralization of authority and power to the executive branch, which this was never designation by the executive branch to the Department of Homeland Security specifically, which is now, if there's any other time in the existence of DHS, now we're seeing the DHS being used as, shall we say, the brown shirts? I mean, is that what we're looking at?
Yep, very much so. And not only that, with the Homeland Security being put in charge in charge of the information and information sharing, We have the TSA's new initiative that will require biometric identification for air travel starting in 2016. Portions of the 2005 Real ID Act are going to take effect as TSA announces it will, by 2016, require the Real ID Act, also known as the Enhanced Driver's License, to board commercial flights. Passengers without a Real ID will be required to present a federal passport for domestic travel.
Along
with the second form of ID.
No.
We went over this. I mentioned the story last week briefly about the Real ID Act. Maybe it didn't have the same language in here, but let me reread this again.
Please do, because this is a game changer, obviously.
The 2005 Real ID Act are about to take effect as TSA announces by 2016 it will require Real ID, also known as Enhanced Driver's Licenses, to board commercial flights. Passengers without a Real ID will be required to present a federal passport, even for domestic travel, along with a second form of ID. Federal passports and Real ID both require biometric data, a front-facing digital photograph of the passenger's face, which is used with facial recognition databases at both federal, state, and local levels. At both federal, state, and local levels? That's good editing. Act of 2005 was enacted under the Bush administration and states that a federal agency may not accept state-issued identifications or identification cards unless they are Real ID Act compliant. The two major components of Real ID compliance are biometrics and RFID chips.
Well, there you have it. And may I commend you again on the exemplary reporting, connecting of dots. So essentially,
and there's a lot more here to go over with the Real ID.
Whereas before, if you're from, we'll say Kentucky, and I don't know if Kentucky has Real ID Act compliant driver's licenses. But let's say they don't, or whatever state, to board a commercial airliner, if it's not compliant at the state level, and you don't have a passport, if you don't have any document that's issued by the federal government, you're not going to be able to travel by air domestically?
Exactly, by air. And don't think it only is going to remain by air, because soon enough it will be as you notice, the Real ID Act is also called the Enhanced Driver's License.
Oh.
So when we read this here, the Enhanced Driver's License is also known as the Real ID Act. Passengers without will just supplement Enhanced Driver's License for Real ID to let you get an idea where this is going. Passengers without an Enhanced Driver's License will be required to present a federal passport, even for domestic travel, along with a separate ID. Federal passports and Enhanced Driver's License both require biometric data. It goes on to say...
well, wait a second, Joe. So what you're saying...
Real ID or Enhanced Driver's License...
You're going too fast, man. You're going too fast, because you're saying that you can vote, right? You can vote without any identification. But the same people are saying you can vote without any ID. You cannot...
Exactly.
Ultimately, you cannot travel by car without... Okay.
Now,
and I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm not trying to be humorous.
It's a segue, because what they're going to do is eventually the people who are here illegally or under some sort of visa program, they will be required to have... Everyone who is a part of the system will be required to be in compliance with the Real ID or with the Enhanced Driver's License. It is something that is not going to stay as part of the federal or as part of the flying arena. It's going to come to the driver's license. This is why they call it Enhanced Driver's License.
But Joe, how did you, in your investigation and research, how can they enforce that?
Well, under President Bush, it was in 2005, George Bush enacted the Real ID Act. And it was modified at a later time under his administration.
Well,
the Real ID Act is not a national identification card. States and territories will continue to issue their own driver's license and identification cards. And there is no federal database of driver information. Each jurisdiction will issue its own unique license and maintain its own records. Even if technically true, this assertion is a bit disingenuous due to the federal government's access to state ID databases via the Federal Fusion Center system. Real ID or enhanced licenses are distinguishable by a gold circle with a star cut out. According to this DHS website, no personally identifiable information is stored on the card's RFID chip or can be transmitted electronically by the card. Now, hold on a second. Why do they have these RFID wallets? To stop people from taking personal information off of credit cards with RFID readers. Because there's information that is very sensitive about a person's identifiability on these credit cards. So RFID readers can swipe the information from people's credit cards without them knowing. So they sell these wallets,
or any card.
Well, any card with an RFID chip in it has the ability to transmit that information if a reader is close enough to it, an RFID reader. So what I don't understand here, and this article points this out, is the DHS is claiming that no personal identifiable information will be stored on the card's RFID chip. Now, one, if that is the case, seeing that the RFID chip is one of the two main components, the other being the facial recognition biometric picture, what use is the RFID chip in the first place if there is no storable personal information on it?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I mean, you're right.
So, anyways, it goes on to say the card uses a unique identification number that links information to a contained secure Department of Homeland Security database. This number does not contain any personal identifiable information. DHS says that only Arizona, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New York, and America's Samoa will not have to meet Real ID standards as of January 2015. They estimate 70 to 80% of all drivers are already carrying Real ID cards or live in states that have received extensions for compliance. The justification for the enhanced driver's license is protection against terrorism and illegal immigration. In truth, the policy that federal facilities will not only recognize Real ID compliant states issued IDs in the future, so even though the card is currently voluntary, it forces U.S. citizens to use it in order to transact with federal government. The Real ID Act of 2005 actually implements a national ID card by default. What is even more dangerous is the absence of checks of federal government power to add requirements in the future. The Real ID Act establishes a centrally coordinated database of personal information about American citizens, including name, date of birth, address, social security number, physical characteristics, biometric identification, including some states with already fingerprints, iris scans, and facial recognition scans that are not only accessible by U.S. federal government, but Canada and Mexico through reciprocity. The database can be easily cross-checked with firearm permit databases as well as political affiliation lists. When detailed with what we have just learned about the NSA surveillance over the past several years, this brings our society several steps closer to full-spectrum dominance at a Orwellian level that Orwell himself couldn't have dreamed of. So, in other words, they list a few states here: Arizona, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New York. Those are the only states not required to comply with the Real ID Act. So now, any person after January of 2015 who doesn't live in those states who get their license renewed will by default have a Real ID card.
Wow. And you can, just to be clear, if you want to know if you've got a Real ID card or Real ID Act compliant card, driver's license, for example, how will you be able to tell?
Well, they say there are certain features, one being a circle with a gold star. A Real ID compliant license and ID cards have a star in the upper right-hand corner. That's one way to distinguish, according to the DHS website.
All right.
And I'm not sure how else, but if I get a license, as my license I think needs to be renewed by my birthday of next year, which is March 28th of 2016, so March 29th I think is the expiry, yep, March 29th of 2016. So next year, and my mother works at the DMV, maybe I should go get mine renewed early and see if mine comes with a little gold star, which I can later cut out and destroy at my leisure.
Well, if you do that, then there goes your ability to...
But I still have my real ID. If there's no personal identification stored on the RFID chips stated from their own website, what use is it? If it, as they say, DHS says, the RFID chip in the electronic or in the card does not contain any personally identifiable information. What purpose would it have?
But see, they're doing this all under the umbrella of security, national security, and also to convince you that this is a more secure method of keeping your data safe and confidential.
And if this wasn't just a slap in the face, the banner or the Homeland Security, I don't know if this is a joke or if this is for real, but the picture that looks like an advertisement for the Real ID card says only a terrorist doesn't carry one.
Oh man!
So it has to be a joke.
No, I mean we'll keep going. I mean this is good stuff, Joe, and you worked hard on this, and I think this keep going. I mean, well, let me just say the other side of this in terms of constitutionality. If you look at the Real ID Act, it tends to violate. Well, it is a violation of the 10th Amendment.
Well, hold on.
Of the Constitution to the United States.
Obama issued a statement today about protecting Americans while making sure government is not abusing its capabilities on privacy. President Obama says this today. This summit is an example of what we need more of. All of us working together to do what none of us can achieve alone. Sounds like the Tower of Babel. And as difficult some of the challenges I've described today have defied solutions for years. And I want to say very clearly that somebody who is a former constitutional law teacher and somebody who deeply values his privacy and family's privacy, although I chose the wrong job for that, but will be a private citizen again and cares deeply about this. I have to tell you that grappling with how government protects the American people from adverse events while at the same time making sure government itself is not abusing its capabilities is hard. The cyber world is sort of like the Wild Wild West, and to some degree, we're asked to be the sheriff. When something like Sony happens, people want to know what government can do about it. If this information is being shared by terrorists in the cyber world and an attack happens, people want to know, are there ways of stopping that from happening? By necessity, that means government has its own significant capabilities in the cyber world. But then people ask, rightly, well, do those safeguards have what we want against the government intruding on our own privacy? And it's hard. It's constantly evolving because the technology so often outstrips whatever rules and standards have been put in place, which means that the government has to be constantly self-critical, and we have to be able to have an open debate about it, is what he said today in his statements on privacy, protecting Americans while making sure a government is not abusing its authority.
Wow, lip service only. I'll say this. If you consider the ramifications of not having or not complying with the Real ID Act, for example, and I ran into this in New York State a few years ago when I did not have, it had nothing to do with the Real ID Act, but it was about identification. But here's the issue with the Real ID Act. If you don't have a document, a Real ID Act compliant document, whether it's a driver's license or even a national ID card, which is essentially a non-driver's adult identification card that is issued through the DMV, you're not going to be able to enter a federal building or an office of your representative. Now think about that. This will deny you your fundamental right to petition the government as guaranteed in the First Amendment. So not only is this a 10th Amendment issue, but it's a First Amendment issue. And of course, if you investigate this, the DHS denies this, the executive branch denies this, even the congressional people deny this, the lawmakers deny this. So, but that's a fact. I mean, if you don't have a Real ID Act compliant identification card, your access to the very people who represent you will be limited on their turf. And that does fly in the face of the 10th Amendment and the First Amendment. Ultimately, this is a systematic dismantling of our Constitution, of our constitutional rights. Now, this was supposed to go into effect, and I should remind people, back in 2000 and when was it? 2008, at least the first phase, through different states. And of course, you folks, you might remember that there was this mass appeal by the states to postpone the implementation. In fact, in April of 2008, every state had either applied for and received extensions. And as of October 2009, 25 states, half of the states in the Union, had approved either resolutions or some sort of binding resolution or legislation that would prohibit their participation in the program. Think about that.
Yeah.
But Napolitano, remember Janet Napolitano?
No, who is that?
Yeah.
Who's he?
Who's he? That's right. Bruce Jenner's alter ego. I crack myself up sometimes. Yeah. Well, they were forcing this issue back in 2008 and 2009. The states were pushing against it. The fact is, federal funds were on the hook, and now, well, the compliance is being forced through federal withholding or the threat to withhold federal funds. But it's also being done at a governor's or at the chief executive office of every state at their level. So man, what an incredible report, Joe. I mean, this is absolutely incredible stuff.
We'll get into more on the other side of the hour. We have a few minutes left of this hour. I want to get into a personal story here because I think this is interesting. I don't know how many of you guys remember last year the polar vortex that we had, where we had minus 35, minus 45-degree wind chills. Last year when that happened, when it was the coldest day on record in Erie, my furnace broke down at midnight. And by the morning, 7 a.m., it was like 45 degrees in the house. Well, today, we were going through one of the coldest streaks of this winter right now. And wouldn't you know, we have a brand new furnace, and something's not working right. The gas isn't coming in the house. So between the furnace guy coming over and then the natural gas people coming over, they were trying to figure out what was wrong. Well, to make a long story short, we haven't had heat in our house since this morning. Our whole front yard and sidewalk are completely dug up, and natural gas now had to leave, apparently, to go to an emergency at the local mall to fix another leak. And they say that they're going to work throughout the night to restore the gas at our house. But I just find it funny, the second year in a row on one of the coldest nights, or some of the coldest nights we've seen. Right now they say it's 14, but it feels like minus 11. We're supposed to have a high tomorrow night, or a low tomorrow night of minus 8, a high of minus 3, I think. And we have, currently feels like minus 11 outside, something like that. And we have a wind chill advisory in effect until Sunday at 3 p.m.
And inside those apartments, balmy 50, right?
2 years in a row, both on the coldest days of the year. 1 year a bad furnace dies. The next year, the National Fuel, which is the company up here, has a blockage only to my house, not to any other house. Last year they had a blockage to all of downtown when it got really cold. This year the blockage is specifically to my house. So I think that's funny. But we have the space heaters. Me and my wife have each other. Candles will stay warm. But I just find it humorous.
Yeah, when you told me that, it was hard to believe, because I do recall that incident last year. And people without heat, there are people without heat this year, and we have to keep them in our prayers and whatever we can do for them to help them. And there are people who are living in substandard conditions in this country, and even the so-called middle class. And it's a shame, Joe, because when you have to decide, and we've been there, and we've all been there, you've got to decide, do I pay the gas company to keep my gas on? Or do I pay the health insurance, or do I pay the car payment, or do I get groceries? I mean, you can only do so much with what you have, and there are a lot of people in that condition right now, in that circumstance right now, in this country. We collectively and individually try to help as many people as we can with whatever we have, and blankets and whatever assistance we can provide. But it's really bad. I don't think I've ever seen a winter where we've had people call or send emails saying, there's just not enough money. There's too much. I mean, people working 2 jobs, not lazy people. I'm talking about people working 2 jobs or 4 jobs if they're married, not being able to make it through the month without. I mean, they got more month than money, and it's a lot of this. And if you can start connecting the dots, and Joe and I were talking about this with respect to the health insurance today. Can it not be connected? They're partially responsible. The health insurance. You've got a clip, Joe, of Ed Schultz talking about the health insurance.
And I just want to let you guys know who's sending in the information on the executive order through the emails. I got an email from Tom with some about index mapping and its relationship to the Utah Data Center and the new cybersecurity executive order. I will go over those links as soon as possible. Hopefully during the show, maybe we can get some more information out on that. But here's a clip of Ed Schultz on Obamacare talking with a man who is having problems.
Hey, but Lou, is it too much to expect that maybe we would see them follow up on what they've been complaining about?
Well, Ed, I can only speak from my experience, and as a small business owner, as a person who runs his own business, my health care has been terribly affected. We're on our 3rd or 4th policy, still trying to find it. People like me that self-insure have been nothing but hurt by Obamacare. I'd like to see the whole thing repealed, but of course, we only have one piece of the government apparatus.
How you been hurt?
Because I used to have insurance that I liked. We had the doctor's group that my wife and the kids were born to and that had always been gone to, and we have not been able to go back to that same doctor's group because they keep dropping the insurances that we get because the government keeps cutting the reimbursements. So I did not get to keep my doctor. I did not get to keep my plan. That was a lie to people.
That's odd. It did not play all the way through. It played all the way through earlier, right?
Yeah, it did.
That's strange. Anyway, I have the transcript right here, which I'll just finish reading. This man talked about how he did not be able to keep his doctor. He did not be able to keep his plan. It was a lie from Obama saying as much that he'd be able to do so. Not only that, but the doctor's group where his daughter had grown up with the same doctor, the same group of doctors that him and his family have used are not accessible. After 3 or 4 different insurance plans, they say that the groups keep dropping the insurance plans they get. The government keeps dropping the reimbursements. So I did not keep my doctor or my plan. That was a lie to people like me who have to be self-insured. Ed Schultz says this, but you're not being denied. That is the one thing. You just have to pay more. That's all. If one of your kids gets sick, you're still going to get insurance. So I'm not quite sure. Well, we'll have to look at previous year's health cares. Did we see double-digit increases? So where's the hurt? It's not going to be a perfect world. You can still get insurance. Forget about the, I mean,
spoken like someone truly either doesn't get it, willfully ignorant, or trying to massage the truth, or both. I think it's the latter.
Saved by the break.
Oh, yeah, man. This time it's Joe vibrating off his chair. Folks, you're listening to a Friday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. It is the 13th day of February 2015.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Friday, February 13th edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Just want to say a quick note. I just saw in our interactive chat room, Katie from Essential Oils, who has been a guest on our show, is going to be on Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show, every Sunday, giving health information.
Fantastic. Congratulations, Katie.
Yeah, congratulations indeed. And we look forward to listening to you.
Yeah, and, I just want to say hello to Deborah O. I'm not, permitted to give any, or I don't have her permission, but, she's been such a godsend to us. Deborah, you know who you are. Thank you so much. You've really helped us out a lot with respect to what you're doing. I know it sounds cryptic, but from Canada, thank you so very much. Folks, I do have an announcement of sorts. When I was talking with Steve Quayle today, he asked me to mention this during the program, asked me to toss this out there. If there are any retired special ops people, Navy SEALs, anybody with experience in special operations who are not currently associated with the government, have seen or have a level of experience in special ops, not a pencil pusher, but actual on boots on the ground experience, and have also, and this is important, are also saved or have had a life-changing transform. If you're saved, genuinely saved by the blood of our Savior, those are two requirements, or three requirements. Number one, special ops or special operations or Navy SEAL type person that's retired and not affiliated with any government or government agency. Number two, you have experience, and thirdly, and perhaps even most importantly, you have a relationship, an active relationship with our Lord and Savior. If you meet those requirements and you have the ability and inclination to assist us in something that we're not going to talk about over the air, please email Steve Quayle. And in the subject line, just put Special Ops per H&H. Special Ops per H&H. Email it to Steve Quayle. You just go to stevequayle.com and just email it to him. You can find his email there. Again, Steve is looking for specifically a Special Ops or Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, whatever, who's seen action or, has seen action, retired, not affiliated with the government currently, not affiliated with any government agency, and is saved, spiritually saved, follower of our Lord and Savior. Please email Steve Quayle in the subject line. Just put Special Ops or former Special Ops per H&H.
Right.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's all I have to say in advance. Now, folks, we were talking, and Joe was talking about the
Real ID Act.
Real ID Act, yep.
New executive order, cybersecurity executive order. I want to kind of switch gears here.
Wait.
Oh, yeah. You have information
Yeah.
on the cybersecurity executive order and occult numerology involved in this, and it started with the 322-page secret action plan, correct?
Well, yeah, and here's the larger picture. As you were doing the research on this, and that's stellar research, thank you so much, and everyone appreciates this. I've been getting emails here. We've been getting emails about how well you structured that investigative report. I want to thank you. But there are some coded messages here that we're looking at. And, the question must be asked: are we just seeing shadows on the wall that are just coincidental, don't mean anything, or are there messages built into these executive orders and other orders? Well, we can see this. As you mentioned, the Internet Act, 322 pages long. Well, obviously, there's something to that. There's something nefarious. Consider the 322 as the number for Skull and Bones. But are we just talking? Are we just making things up, or just kind of seeing things that are not there? We were doing some research today and throughout the week in preparation for tonight and in preparation for this particular topic. And if you notice, if you go back in over the last 12 months, we've been seeing an increase in coded messages in plain sight. For example, the London Daily Mail paper had not recently, but within the last 12 months, had talked about the Obama. Remember when Obama came out, or the story came out about the number of fake followers Obama had on Twitter? Did you happen to see that? Do you recall that story? Well, it was, the number was 19.5 million fake Twitter followers. And isn't it interesting, within that same report, number of fake followers for Michelle Obama happened to be 1.9 or practical 19 million fake followers. The percentage, as reported, was 33%. So what we're looking at here, and once you understand what this New World Order really is and how it's being gradually implemented, you will be able to quickly identify it in the headlines and in the text of the daily news. And by doing so, by being able to identify it, you're able then to learn, or you're able then, once you can identify it, you can see what's important, and you can learn how to protect yourself as well as including your family too. You're going to find insights, I believe, and we believe, so startling, you won't look back, or you won't look at the news the same ever again. You're going to see the system of communication. We often talk, and I'm going to just do a brief side note here. If you go back, perhaps one of the most biggest examples of, and hard to deny examples of this secret communication, goes back to the inaugural address of George W. Bush on January 21st, 2001. We've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. You go back to the, after the Declaration of Independence was signed, Virginia statesman John Page wrote to Thomas Jefferson, "We know the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Do you not think an angel rides on the whirlwind and directs the storm?" Now, we talk about that quite frequently. This is addressed in Apollyon Rising 2012 by Tom Horn. When you look at that statement by Bush, although you might think, well, there's a Bible quotation in there, there's not. But the Illuminati, the Luciferians, they depict Lucifer in their writings as an angel. Now, people like, oh my goodness, pick anyone who's an expert in the Illuminati or with Illuminati mind control, will tell you that this particular inaugural address on January 21st, 2001 has just a lot of Illuminist information, or it's riddled with, riddled with the Illuminati information or signals, coding. This telegraphed, that one inaugural speech telegraphed to the world that George W. Bush was in fact giving Illuminati coding through that ceremony. He gave very strong visible signals during that ceremony. He faced the Washington Monument, the obelisk, during the ceremony, and as illuminists throughout the world, you know, and so did Obama as well, but this represents a committed Illuminati global plan to change the world into a one-world government, the economy, the religion, and so on. This will allow, this is greasing the skids for the Antichrist to rise. Now, what does all this have to do with what we're talking about today? Well, you've got to examine that coded statement in depth to understand what Bush meant and how it fits in with the Illuminist Code, and then apply it to this particular executive order. And remember, as I'm mentioning this very quickly here, it doesn't matter if you believe this. And Russ Dizdar, who's going to be a guest with us on Monday, it's what they believe that matters. So the first thing to understand that his statement, for example, we know the race is not to the swift nor the battle of the strong. Do you not think an angel rides on the whirlwind and directs the storm? The first thing we've got to understand about this statement is its symbolism via the Illuminist people. The Declaration of Independence was deliberately planned to be issued on July 4th, 1776. It was 66 days after the Satanic High Holy Day period starting on April 30th, and it was exactly 13 days after the June 21st summer solstice. Now, our founding fathers waited until there were precisely 13 states before they founded the Union. Then, finally, when you add the numbers forming the year 1776, you get 21, a very revered number to the occultists. Now, as we spoke, or as much as we love our Declaration of Independence, we have to understand that it was a document that really emanated from Illuminati, important Illuminists like Thomas Jefferson, and it was specifically timed. So, too, are the nature of these executive orders. They're very specifically timed. Look at the date that this executive order that Joe referenced and so eloquently dissected. 2/13. All right, the number 13 here. So we're seeing in historical context a pattern of communication, referencing whirlwind in the Bible. Once again, and we've talked about this before, this is not a biblical statement. The King James Version of the Bible translates whirlwind 27 times in 25 verses, each one in the Old Testament, and nearly always in terms of God's judgment. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, but John Page's statement was taken from, oh my goodness, it was Nahum 1, chapter 1, verse 3, the Lord is slow to anger and great in power and will not acquit the wicked. The Lord hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm. Now, the meaning of the word whirlwind in this passage is tempest or physical storm. And again, if you want more information on this, you can certainly find it in Napoleon Rising and elsewhere. So, what does this all mean? Who cares? I mean, it's a whole lot of nothing, right? It's irrelevant to today. Well, no, the work is continuing today. What we saw, the foundations that we saw early on in the 1700s, and I'm big on history and I'm big on the big picture, this is why I'm going through this, is that we can see messages being hidden in plain sight. So what? 11, 13, 33? These are three of the most important numbers. And with respect to the Illuminati, and 3, of course, the numbers 3, 7, 9, 11, 13, 33, and 39. Any multiple of those numbers have very special meaning to the Illuminati. If you just look at the Bilderberger group, for example, they've got a core number of 39 members. Those 39 members are broken into 3 groups of 13. Who's controlling this country? Who's the front or one of the front agencies for this country or organizations? The Bilderbergers. So, if you notice that the core 39 answers to the 13 who make up the policy committee, that's important to know. Take special notice that the 13 members of the policy committee answer to the round table of 9. So, what we're seeing here is a structure. So, bottom line, the timing of this particular executive order being on the 13th day of February 2015, it does hold a very special significance. Look at the length of the executive order as well. There's a lot to it. What I'm saying, and I won't bore you any further with this, but I think it's important to understand, this is a communication. Its timing, why wasn't it released yesterday? Why today? There was a reason for it. Why the length? There's a reason for it. And it's steeped in Illuminati symbolism. This is an important directive for a number of reasons, and also substantiated through the coded messaging system. That's all I wanted to say, Joe. I just wanted to bring that up before we moved on, because you've got to look at this much bigger, and not just from our vantage point, but from their vantage point. So it does hold specific meaning. The date, the length, the numbers, the sections, all of this carefully worded and carefully orchestrated in terms of timing, and that makes it even more nefarious. So, you want to see how things are lining up? There it is. I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir.
All right. We're going to open the phone lines. I'm going to hit a few more pieces of news while people call in at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. We want to hear from you, and I'm going to keep going through some of these headlines. I know nothing. Hispanic caucus member didn't know that illegals will receive tax refunds. Illinois Congressman Luis Gutierrez told the Daily Caller Friday that he didn't know illegal immigrants are eligible for tax refunds even though they have not paid taxes. IRS Commissioner John Koshkin,
I think.
Koshkin told members of Congress Wednesday that illegal immigrants who did not pay taxes will be able to claim back refunds once they are issued Social Security numbers. I know nothing of the sort, Gutierrez snapped at the Daily Caller reporter on Friday when asked about the testimony. Of course it would be like you to raise that sort of question, the Democrat continued. Why don't you ask the commissioner of the IRS? The commissioner, of course, had already been asked about it. Under the new program, he told members of the House Oversight Committee Wednesday, if you get a Social Security number and you work, you'll be eligible to apply for earned income tax credits. You'll get an amount depending on your situation, he added. If you are an individual working and applying for the federal earned income tax credit, the minimum you can get is a range from $500 to $600. However, according to the IRS's own website, a filer can receive a check up to $6,100 when they have 3 or more qualifying children. When asked whether the tax credit program was only eligible to illegal immigrants who have previously filed tax returns, Koshkin conceded that those who haven't filed before could still be eligible for back credits. It turns out that there is a lack of clarity about that. If you get a Social Security number, you can then file for this year if you're working, and if you've earned income in the 3 years you were working before that you filed, you'll be eligible for back pay.
Wait a minute.
Yes. No, you heard me right.
So you're eligible for back credits even though you didn't pay?
Even though you weren't a citizen of the country or working in the country.
Can't beat that deal.
Oh, I can beat it. How about I won't pay a single freaking penny in taxes this year if people who are not working, who are not citizens of this country, are going to get tax refunds.
Yeah, that's
only fair.
Oh,
right?
Man. How broken do we have to be before we descend upon Washington with pitchforks?
I'm sure I'd be put to jail. In jail.
Yeah.
They would find a jury of 12.
Well, you see that's the thing. It wouldn't be in federal court. It's through IRS court. That's the thing. They don't put you through the federal court system necessarily. They go through the IRS court. It's a different venue, same highway, so to speak, but different lane. And the Constitution, as we heard in the case of Irwin Schiff, hey, it doesn't apply here. So it doesn't apply. The Constitution doesn't apply. Obviously, especially when you're giving away tax refunds to non-citizens and back pay.
And on another note, another update from the prosecutor who was suicided in the cover-up of including the Argentina president. Federal prosecutor in Argentina requested to investigate President Cristina and Foreign Minister Tierman in the case that looks into the alleged cover-up of the Iranians' role of the 1994 AMIA bombing. Policia presented a 61-page report before Judge Daniels, giving green light to the complaint first filed now by late AMIA Special Prosecutor Alberto Niesman, who was the one that was killed. She is going to face charges. the president of Argentina on a cover-up.
We'll see how long that lasts. I mean, can you imagine? Well, good luck with that, I guess.
The complaint was filed, shocked the political world when the foreign minister told lawmakers that the president, that it was filed. Niesman also accused a few former judges of being intelligence agents working for the administration, and another man in Buenos Aires included in the cover-up. Niesman, according to Niesman, Argentina signed a memorandum of understanding with Iran in January of 2013 to lift the Interpol red notices against the Iranian suspects. He argued the president wanted to promote trade relations with Tehran and agreed to leave the justice claim behind. The prosecutor first filed his complaint before Lijo, who is a judge, who is the magistrate in charge of investigating the cover-up of the bombing. The complaint was then taken by Judge Rafikas. The government has argued that neither the creation of a truth committee, together with Iran's memorandum, nor the lifting of the red alerts took place, and said this would invalidate Niesman's complaint. However, Politica stated that the doctrine is unanimous in considering indifferent that the goals of the cover-up are achieved to carry on with the complainant. So expect things to happen in Argentina, either the justice system to be corrupted and conform to the president's wishes, or the president to be ousted and political chaos to ensue in Argentina. Also, Iranian leader sends Obama a secret letter. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has responded to overtures from U.S. President Barack Obama amid nuclear talks by sending him a secret letter, the Wall Street Journal reported Friday. Citing an Iranian diplomat, the paper said the Iranian cleric had written to Obama in recent weeks in response to the presidential letter sent in October. Obama's letter suggested the possibility of U.S.-Iranian cooperation in fighting the Islamic State if a nuclear deal was secured, the paper said, quoting the diplomat. The Khamenei's letter was respectful but non-committal. It quoted a diplomat as saying the White House declined to comment on the report. Khamenei this week could accept a compromise in the nuclear talks and gave his strongest defense yet of Iranian President Hassan Rouhani's decision to negotiate with the West, a policy opposed by powerful hardliners in Iranian home. Nuclear talks with the U.S., Russia, China, Britain, France, and Germany are aimed at clinching an accord that would ease Western concerns that Tehran could pursue a covert nuclear weapons program in return of the lifting of sanctions that have ravished the Iranian economy. The deadline now set for June 30th, negotiators have set for the final accord, and Western officials say they have an aim to agree on the substance of such a deal by March.
Interesting. Well, this is something else we're watching, and you can chalk this up to, it's just nothing. It's just a conspiracy theory. It's just a coincidence. Well, you decide, okay? We're looking at this in the as Ted Broer likes to say, in the aggregate. We're looking at this through a macro lens. And folks, I'm sure you've heard about this. If not, well, now you will. Media columnist David Carr, he wrote the media equation column for the New York Times. He penned a memoir about his fight with drug addiction. He collapsed at his office and died at age 58, just hours before his death yesterday. He had moderated a Times Talks conversation with Snowden, Edward Snowden. You heard me correctly. Isn't it interesting? Not only did he talk with and moderate the conversation with Snowden, but journalist Glenn Greenwald about the documentary Citizen 4, which chronicles Snowden's leak of National Security Agency documents. Now, Card really had asked, this interview, according to the information that we have, this interview really was a very cutting-edge interview. And there were very specific questions that were asked, and observations made about the film Citizen 4. Extremely odd. Now, if you have seen pictures of Carr, he doesn't look as if he's in the best of health for his age of 58. But you've got to take this again, looking at this in a larger sense. Compare this to, or add this to the list with Breitbart and others. This guy, Carr, has been described as one of the finest media reporters of his generation and a leader in the Times newsroom. He did this interview, collapsed, and died. Now, information that has not made the news suggests that there were recordings made by Carr of Snowden that were kept in his office safe that have been removed. Now, we can't confirm this, but this also kind of has a Vince Foster-ish feel to it, not in the when I say that, I'm talking about what happened in his office after Foster was dead. So, if we're looking at this, I think we have to start looking at this like the trail of dead bankers, like the trail of dead journalists. You start asking some very difficult questions, or you start playing around in this venue. Are we looking at something more here? You know, look, it could very well be this was from natural causes. It certainly, we acknowledge that, but we must ask the question, despite any major health problems that this man might have had.
Yeah, and there are lots of people commenting in the chat that he did have serious health issues, having trouble breathing, did not look very healthy or well at all during the interview. You could ask or say, is that a byproduct of something that was kicking into effect already, or was this something natural? I mean,
let's just keep it on the table. I just want to, again, it could very well be the man had a very, very bad health history, including his fight with drugs, which is very well known. But interesting timing nonetheless. Just keep it out there, and let's keep watching for patterns. Let's look for things, not to make them up or to create patterns where there are none, but let's look at the aggregate. Let's look at the total. Let's look at the entire big picture here. But what really bothers me is the allegation, and this is one that's not proven, or at least not proven, authenticated, verified to my satisfaction. But it seems like he did have a collection of tapes and documents relating to Snowden that were taken from his office, specifically from his office safe. And my question is, was it done out of an abundance of caution by a colleague or by a supervisor, or was this done for nefarious means or for various motives? That's my question. I suppose more than, obviously, we're saddened at his death, but we're also looking at what happened afterwards, and that hence a reference to Foster. But I wanted to just make sure everyone knew that, and man, that's just it's getting interesting out there.
Yes, it is. We're going to go to your calls, as we do have a number of people on hold. Give us a call at 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839. Not sure if you guys heard about this. A story to keep your eyes on in Iceland has convicted bad bankers and says other nations can act. Iceland's Supreme Court has upheld convictions of market manipulation for 4 former executives of the failed Kaupthing Bank in a landmark case that the country's special prosecutor said showed it was possible to crack down on fraudulent bankers. It goes on to talk about Iceland's government appointed a special prosecutor to investigate bankers after the world's financial systems were rocked in 2008 over the huge debt crisis and widespread poor corporate governance. And in doing so, they have been successful in prosecuting bankers at the manipulation of monetary policy and economies. And in Iceland, they're saying that there's not only been successful at prosecuting some of the biggest European private bankers, but they have opened the door for larger countries to prosecute these same type of crimes across the world. I'll post this link in the chat room as it's an important read for people, and we can get into it as we go through the callers tonight. But we do want to hear from you. Next week we have a full week of guests where we won't really have time for callers except maybe for Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening in the third hour. And the following week, it's looking like we're going to have a full lineup of guests also. So if you want to say something, this is probably your best chance to do it for the next few weeks. So give us a call at 661-244-9839. We're going to start with area code 308. 308, you're up first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 308?
Wow, that's a pretty... There you go.
I hear someone.
Testing, 1, 2.
All right, we'll put you back on hold. We're going to go to 805. 805, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 805.
Sounds like we're having some trouble with our relay there.
All right, how about this? 724. 724, you're up now. Can you hear?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello, guys. How are you tonight?
Very well.
Well, earlier when you were talking about everything that's been rolled out in some of the executive orders, just in plain English, okay, does this mean, is it like the Social Security is set up to replace or like undo things that we've done throughout our lifetime? Like, and I noticed with the school loans, I went to college a long time ago, but with school loans, like they changed companies, there was a lot of switching around of a lot of things, but really what do you see in the nearest future, like where it would really affect us? Like, people are going to lose their properties? Is that a form of eminent domain? I mean, it sounds like a lot of different things all at once being thrown at you, but it's laying the groundwork for something. So I guess, how do you
That's
guys
a great
see?
question.
Okay.
I think what you're asking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're asking is how will this affect us? Well, we just talked about it, or what Joe talked about in the first hour. How does this all affect us? Is that like how?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Joe, I'm going to toss it to you because, my answer to this is really simple. It creates a system of centralization. In other words, whereas it's taking power away from everything we talked about, it's taking power away from the states, centralizing it with the federal government, pushing it through the fusion centers, using DHS as the implementation vehicle to implement the prosecution, if you will, of what is of confiscation or of law enforcement. So, how does it affect all of us? Well, we're going to be subjugated to not our states, not as it should be according to the 10th Amendment, and this depends on what we're talking about, but we're going to be subjugated to the whims and wishes of the federal government through the fusion centers. They're going to be the police, judge, jury, and ultimately executioner in what's going to be taking place. So everything is centralized for easier control when they finally do implement the one or the single global governance, as well as the tyranny here in the States. I don't know if that makes sense. Joe, go ahead and
No, it makes a lot of sense. What's going to happen is they're slowly going to move us towards a system where we're going to have a choice where we're going to have to opt out if we do not want to be a part of this system, this beast system. And in the meantime, it's going to continue to slowly progress us into the system to the point where we get to that, making the choice of, if you want to continue, you need to do this in order to be a part of our system. Otherwise, you will not be a part of our system, you will be considered an enemy, just like the Bible says. You won't be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast, the image of the mark, or worshiping the name of the beast. And this is the beast system that's being set up. It's a system of supply and demand.
It's a system of exclusion too,
yeah.
Joe. And let me make it real simple for you, ma'am, too. And this is the way I understand it, because it's really hard to wrap at least for me, it's hard to wrap my head around all of this. And it leaves me spinning, thinking, well, how in the world, how can this be? But think about this: if you don't comply, or if you don't have a federal document, for example, the Real ID Act, if you don't have a document that's compliant with that act, you will not be able to fly domestically. Now, the next step will be you will not be able to drive or
interstate travel.
Yeah,
interstate driving.
Right.
Yeah.
That's going to affect your rights. Instead of making it a state issued a rule or law, it defaults to the federal authorities, and it's federalization of the state's responsibilities. I'm not sure if that made sense, but effectively it's going to exclude you and me. Go ahead.
Well, it's such a big thing that they're doing. I don't know how the only model they really have is the Nazi Germany, all the way to do that. But this is United States. This is way bigger than something that, it's not like Germany where I think, when Germany was slowly, methodically done the way they did things in Germany. It looks like it parallels to a lot of the things that have happened then. And, I find it really ironic that there's no easy way to explain this, because it's so big. It's so huge. It has to be, I'm just going to play devil's advocate, but if you're doing something along these orders, it looks to me like you almost need time to implement something this massive, and hopefully it'll work for them. That's the way I look at it, because what happens if they fail at their attempt to do this, like Jesus returning, but really mess things up for them, you know what I mean? Think about it. I'm just, like I said, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not saying
right.
Wouldn't that really put a wrench in their plans? Evil has its own agenda, but so does God.
And God is in control too, and what we're seeing here, and at least I believe this, looking at it from a spiritual angle, the fact that we have been disobedient and, of course, engaged in abortion and everything else, the pornography and just sin on such a massive level, the protection of God is being lifted from our country, and the power of the air, the Prince of Darkness, is allowed to have his way with us. That's what we see taking place. But you make a good point about this country being so large. If you've ever flown across country, or across the country, look out the plane window and see the expanse of this country. So they have to tweak their agenda because of the mass. But then again, this is why too, and something we did not mention, but this is why a lot of the Agenda 21 is pushing people into the cities. There's a reason for that, for control of movement and better surveillance of people. So that it's all connected.
Yeah, I'm really saddened, but I have a sister that she just does not understand. It's not that she doesn't understand that bad things happen. It's just she wasn't raised. A lot of these, I hate to say it, people call them sheeple, but some of them they have been slowed down purposely, because they don't it's not that they don't want to understand. I hate to say it, but all the effects of some of the things that have happened over generations has hit them. They are the generation that's been almost with all, and I hate to say it because I know firsthand what I've seen with the immunizations, what it's caused. I have a nephew who has mild autism. There's no reason otherwise he's a totally normal kid. But that just little bit of slight problem there makes all sense to me what's going on. But to try to explain that to somebody, and with a language they understand, and we're talking like third grade, kindergarten language, because they hate to say it, but that was done intentionally in a way. They're not. I don't want to say they're not sharp, but
No, they've been taught at a third grade level, like you were saying. I mean,
well, that and
if you go back to the 1850s and try to take a test from a sixth grade English class, all of us would probably fail miserably, and that's by, like you said, by design, through the dumbing down.
And through vaccinations and fluoridation and other chemtrailing, and I mean they're hitting us from all sides. The educational system, it is, and that's why it's so difficult to attempt to awaken people, because of the of the intentional dumbing down and the numbing and the drugging and the spraying and the vaccinations. And people will say, well, vaccinations, they don't hurt, or they don't harm anything. Well, the statistics say otherwise. So, plus the ingredients within the vaccinations themselves. Look at the ingredients list. What does it do to your pineal gland? And Ted Broer talks about the pineal gland and the calcification of that pineal gland, which also is, I don't want to sound new agey, but the gateway, or the gateway of spirituality to some extent. That's not the entire extent, but I mean that has something to do with it. One could argue that on a biological level. So all of this together is really affecting us. Yeah, it is sad. But my question to you, caller, do you think that we can get enough people mobilized in time to, we can't stop what's coming, but maybe delay it?
Well, I think with the Lord's help, definitely. I think you really got to get a lot of smart people that can kind of foresee some of the problems and how to overcome those. Like, there has to be an elementary way to explain it without jarring people, because you can't emotionally freak people out. It doesn't work. Freaking them out will they'll throw them way off,
Right.
I've tried that, and it does not work. You can't, I listen to a lot of Christian preaching, especially on the internet, and one thing you cannot do, and it happens by accident, some of it, but some of it, I think, you can't take swipes at people if you're trying to draw them into the church. You don't want to call them names. The name calling has to stop. You can't call them sheeple. You got to find another approach to draw them in. Okay, I'm not saying you guys, but I'm just saying in verbatim what I heard. And I listened to one of the internet preachers, and you can't take swipes at people. You can't throw out the beheading stuff casually that people don't care. It's just, our hands are tied, if you say something, you're afraid there's going to be some kind of retribution. It's that fear element of fear that you're going to lose your children if you don't get your immunizations. That's all done for that reason, to scare people. And people have to lay out the facts first. Don't throw all this. Don't call them names. The name calling's probably, we've all done it. But if you really want to be serious about this, and put all that aside, just say, listen, no more taking swipes at people. This is much more bigger than this. But I think people have a tendency, especially on the internet, is just throw little, little swipes at each other.
Oh, sure. And that's why, too, ma'am. And you make a great point. First of all, one of the most important things is this: we cannot appear to be hyper, the sky is falling type of people, or the world is going to end. Perhaps a better way to put it, instead of saying, look, we're facing the end of the world. No, we're not really facing the end of the world. We know, of course, biblically speaking, how this all plays out, or at least the generalities of how it plays out. But what we're looking at, instead of saying, we're looking at the end of the world, we're looking at the end of a lifestyle, or the way we knew the world to be. And, so tactfully, because you're right, listener fatigue sets in.
Right.
All of this hypersensitivity. People get tired of doom talk all of the time, but it's real, but we have to be careful not to overstate the case. So you're absolutely right.
Right. It's if you hear too much of it, regurgitating the same thing over and over again, and you pound away at the same thing, and it's just the way. I mean, I emailed the person. I had real problems with the way they were preaching this, because you got to be careful that you don't casually talk about these topics like that Americans don't care about the Christians being beheaded. That is one of the things about journalism, and I am in the journalism field, is that is an overgeneralization which usually can't be backed up with facts, because there are a portion. Let's just assume that statement is completely false, which I know it is. That conversation almost obscures the whole discussion from the moment you even throw that out there. So people right then, their defenses, they shut their brain off, they change the channel. And I used to listen to Sean Hannity a lot, and not that I don't disagree with some of the things he said, but it was starting to sound redundant, regurgitating over and over. You have to have fresh material, have to approach it differently. If you're going to talk about that same topic, approach it differently, approach it from another angle, say, okay, from their vantage point, from this vantage point, because there's a lot of different sides to this, and I'm looking at it from the bigger side. This is so big. The chances there of failing at implementing this is going to be, it's obvious. You just can't take over a country this big with all the problems that could come with that. Unless there was a deliberate act that would cause people literally to be limped, I mean, it's too hard to take over a big country like this. That's why we know it was meant for it to be 3 branches of government and on down with the state governments in charge of their own state. That's why it was designed that way. It's an utter failure to think otherwise. You can't operate a country unless the America was designed this way because it's so big.
Well,
it's too big for one president to take over and do all this.
Well, it's difficult to legislate, or it's difficult, or it never was intended for the president to legislate. No, that's not his job, and of course that's why we have states, and that's why we have state governments. But we're seeing this consolidation of power. Now, so I agree with you on that. I mean, we've got a vast country, but look at the demographics. Look at where the population centers are, as opposed to the entire country doesn't have to be taken over. Just key population centers and those centers of those areas. Okay. Now on the other hand, okay, if you want to take a country over, what do? You destroy its currency. You wreck its. You infiltrate its culture by balkanizing the country through illegal immigration. Yeah. So there's steps that are being taken, and I think they're very effective. They're being very effectively taken at this point.
You and me both. We're sitting here talking about this, but if I was just game planning, I decided I'm going to take over some big land property. There's a lot involved. I mean, working in a real estate agency type job to get that property. But if you take all the legalities out of it and you just take over it, I mean, but there's still a lot involved in that too. I guess to me, it just seems it's as ridiculous as it sounds. It's very effective if you do it the way you do it through seizure of people's property, like with the Bundy Ranch, which a lot of people did not think that's important, but that's just a microcosm.
Sure.
It's just that small example of what can happen on a bigger scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to mention one other thing. It was the lady that called the other night. Now, I've listened to a lot of talk radios, even since I was a little girl, when my dad and mom listened. But when that lady spoke, the older woman from Buffalo.
Yes.
You guys, let me say about this. I know you get a lot of compliments about your show, but the intimacy in that conversation, where do you get that in talk radio? Like, I've listened to Michael Savage. You don't have an intimate conversation with Michael Savage, okay? But when I listen to you guys, and I love Michael Savage, and I love Alex Jones, adore those guys, but on an intimate level, to talk the way that conversation went down, it was so sweet. And you guys have that certain intimate touch with your callers that I want to just say, good for you guys that you got to that place that people can open up this way, because I don't feel I have anything to hide. I mean, everything out there has already been exposed. I mean, you have no privacy. You might as well just get used to talking however, or, you know, something, you know, whatever. Your freedoms are already gone, you know, so don't be afraid of what you, the only thing you do have is your voice. And if you're so afraid to even speak, then you are already a slave. If you're afraid to talk about things that are real, you know, these are real things that we may never, we'll be silenced forever if we never exercise that one right we have, and that speech and that intimate conversation that we can have while we can have it, you know. So I would say that most of us, whoever are reluctant or afraid, and I know you're limited because of where you know, your position and where you're at with things, but I'm just going to say it for you, don't be afraid to just let it out sometimes if the time is right. But, you know, we have your back and we're praying all the time, and it's obvious that you're taking on a bigger, you know, taking on a monster, the one-eyed monster. So we love you guys.
Well, you know, we just feel such an intimacy with our listening audience, and you know, there's a danger there of sounding very self-serving and even trite when we say that, but we feel an intimacy with our listeners. I mean, we've met a lot of people in Montana and Florida and Ohio, the conferences we go to, and when seeing them face to face is really, it's gratifying to us, and it's equally gratifying to get calls like yours. And you know, we do our best, and it's not us though. See, it's and that's one thing Steve Quayle and even Pastor Langford had really drilled into our heads. Look, it's not you guys. Don't even think for a minute it's you guys, and we don't, because we know how bad we are in terms of, you know, we can't do this.
You have a lot of successful people who are successful in their own right who listen to you and who have probably maybe had, you know, a lot of things that they relate to because of maybe where they were in their career and family life at some point in their life. Some have retired. I'm in my 40s. I have something called the Field Report, and I try to do the internet blog talk radio thing, and it's not easy to do what you're doing. So, you know, to have that type of intimacy that you can just be real with people and let down their guard, that's not easy to do. Nobody can just let their guard down completely. But at least we know that the fear factor is the big thing here. You know, I think that we fear all these things, and it's definitely a one-eyed monster. That's what I'll call it for now. It's this one ugly one-eyed monster that we're encountering, and it is, you know, it's like the Blob. It just take over everything, you know. So, you know, we definitely have to be spiritually ready. And I told you guys when I talked to you a couple of weeks ago about my dad, and I was listening to that whole audio again, and my dad had told me, I told you, he had mentioned this to me, but this makes all sense to me. There's the whole implementation of the chip, I mean, the downsizing of the American dollar. You'd almost have to see these things happen in order for this to set up for this. But we also have Jesus, and that would really throw a big wrench in things every day. So I'm praising God that he can throw a big wrench in all this.
Well, amen. And we're at the top of the hour. We're going to have to let you go, but thank you for the call. God bless you, and you have a great weekend. And thanks again.
Thank you for all the time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go take our top of the hour break. We're going to come back. We have a lot of callers, so we're going to go through the callers as fast as possible, so we can try to get to as many people as we can. Lightning round of callers. We'll be back after these short messages. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Friday, February 13th, 2015. Stay with us for our final hour after these short messages. And welcome back to our third and final hour on this Friday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to take your phone calls, and we're going to do kind of a lightning round thing. Take as many phone calls as fast as we can on this Friday edition. We're going to start with area code 303. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug, Joe, it's Ken in Colorado. How are y'all this evening?
Fantastic, Ken.
Hey, Ken, good to hear from you.
Hey, buddies, how you doing? Been
Good.
listening to your show and everything. Kind of here's a little bit of, I don't know, questioning by your audience, what, when, where, all that.
Right.
You guys know me, and you know what I do, and the availability that I have, and I talk to different people. And I kind of reiterated to you on the back end of some of the conversations I've had with some relatively well-connected people over the last week or two.
Yep.
And I think probably one of the most ones that, to be honest with you, just scares me to death. And his response, his position and everything is Dr. Paul Craig Roberts.
All right.
And I personally, you guys know what I do. I book people for shows. I help you guys out. I help other people out. And I had an opportunity to have a lengthy conversation, 15, 20 minutes. And to be honest with you, when someone talks to me and they're on that level and they say to me, look, here's what you need to do. You need to get what you think you need and then get everything else you think you don't need. And I think if anyone will go back over the last 3 weeks, research Dr. Paul Craig Roberts' publications, be they through King World, be they through his website, be they through his interview on Caravan to Midnight on February the 3rd, be they through all of that, and take the context of those words, listen to what he's saying, listen and look at him, and come to some sort of peace within yourself of what you really need to do. And I really think that it's a time where people need to start taking care of themselves.
Very sobering thought. And
then,
ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Ken from Colorado. We know Ken. Ken helps us a great deal. He's done a lot for us. And what he just said, folks, please understand what he said conversationally. Paul Craig Roberts, no slouch, former member of the Reagan administration in the Treasury Department of Treasury, said, yeah, here's what you need to do. Get prepared. Get everything that you think you need and everything that you think you don't need. Right. Now that's sobering.
When that comes from a man of that substance, and Paul Craig is very reserved, he's very matter of fact, and there is no ambiguity there. Hey, this is what you need to do, and I personally asked him, because I have my own personal reasons for that. Now, I have all of my other reasons for everything that I do for other people and all that stuff. And I went to him personally after having many conversations with him over the last year and a half. This is not something that was just, spur of the moment. I've had enough conversations with him to where, he kind of opens up a little bit. I think that was very telling. I think that was a grandfather talking to a grandson and saying, get it together.
Ken, did he give you any indication as to what's coming? I mean, well, obviously his world, his area of expertise is the economy. Are we to believe that?
Absolutely. All his insight is based on the economy. And for me to try to take inference on what he's saying, this, that, and the other, I'm not going to do that.
All right.
What I'm going to say to your people is go back, Google Paul Craig Roberts, look at the 10, 15 different articles that have been written either by him or where he has been interviewed over the last 2 weeks. Now, he is a very prolific writer.
Sure he is.
But he is not that prolific. If you go back and look over the last 2 weeks, there's an inordinate amount of information that he's putting out there, be it through King World, be it through interviews on, various radio stations and internet media things and stuff. He is absolutely extra prolific right now. And in having that little 5-minute conversation with him that was more pointed toward what do you think, the conversation was longer than that, but it had to do with other things. And then him offering that up, that was kind of, oh, wow, pay attention.
Wow.
This man's telling you something. And that's really interesting. Well, and then even to go a little bit further past that, then later in the last week had a conversation, similar, same type of thing, similar, same kind of relationship with Catherine Austin Fitz, kind of mirroring the same thing, kind of going like, well, I think we're in kind of a slow burn situation, but, the black swan could happen at any time, and then all bets are off. Now, these are two very well-connected people.
Indeed, they are.
They are very unsettled about what is going on.
Wow.
To the relativeness of what that is, I can't speak to. And I don't call you guys a whole lot. We deal on the back end and all that stuff, but just happened to be sitting here tonight and was listening to it, and I heard a lot of angst in your callers.
Well, we've got a lot of personal angst as well, along with our callers. We're in this together. We're trying to make sense of all of this as well. Sometimes you're just beating your head against a wall. And the last caller had said, a lot of people don't want to hear it, and they get turned off by the constant stream of, hey, the sky's falling. I am in no way trying to doom porn or this, that, or the other or anything like that. I just, a lot of times I hear things and I go, oh, wait a minute, I want to say something about that. And I just go like, nah, I just leave it alone. And, I have an involvement with a number of different radio shows and this, that, and the other, and I have the open access and the open lines into it, and I can get in there. I just don't do it. Right.
I do what I do. It helps you guys, and that's it.
Well, we appreciate that.
But every once in a while, I feel compelled to jump in there and say, hey, wait a minute, think about this, or I heard this. And I can assure you, I would never call in and say anything unless I was, right there touching it, feeling it, and talk with people that I know that they're telling me what's on their heart and what's on their mind. Are they right? Are they wrong? I don't know. Are they positioned well enough in the scheme of things and their previous positions and who they are now and all of that? I'm blessed to be able to have that, interaction with them because of some of the things that I do. And every once in a while, not to betray confidences or anything like that, I may feel compelled to jump out there and go like, hey, folks, pay attention.
And we love it.
Here's a little bit more. Here's a little another tidbit. Can I change your mind? Can I make you do something different? No. I don't know. Here's a little tidbit. And I know this to absolutely be truth.
All right.
So I don't know if that helps you, your audience, or anything like that. And
it gives us a sense of it reaffirms the urgency that we have. It reaffirms that thought in the background that, hey, something is imminent or brewing here. So no, it gets people to pay attention. When Paul Craig Roberts says, hey, start, get prepared, you tend to listen over an anonymous anonymous person. So
yeah.
All right, brother.
Something's happening, folks. Pay attention. If you think you need to do it, go ahead and do it. If you don't think you need to do it, it's probably a good time to do it anyway. Thank you, brother. Have a good show.
All right, man. God bless. Thank you. Very sage words, very good words from Ken from Colorado. And, it's just to reaffirm this, and because emails wondering, what we're saying. It's a lot of times it's how we say what we say. The message remains urgent. It's an urgent message. Yes, things are happening, but it's when you're talking to others, and I just want to be clear on this. It's not that the message is not inconsistent with what we've been saying. A lot of times when you're trying to convince others, and I think that this is where a couple of people are saying, well, what are you saying? Are you saying that things are not as bad as we say they are? No. That's not what we're saying at all. It's when you're talking with others who are not up to speed, it's a lot of times it's how you say it as opposed to how you explain it. You just can't go in there and say, hey, hit them with a baseball bat. You've got to kind of pet them a little bit, and pat their head and pull their chair out, treat them with kid gloves. If your objective is to get them to listen to you, that's kind of what we're saying. It's all in the delivery. The message is unchanged. However, Joe, go ahead.
All right, let's go back to the phone. We're going to go to area code 515. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Thank you so much, guys. God bless you. Doug and Joe, you've been like a father and brother to me. Doug, you're like an uncle who I turned to a dad, and just the way you talk, it makes me feel so great. By the way, my name's Charles from Des Moines. I just want to let you know that.
Oh, hi, Charles from Des Moines. I really appreciate your call and appreciate the fact that we can share that relationship of sorts. Like the last or like the caller before was talking about. It's great to hear.
Definitely. So, and Doug, I just want to say to you, my dad is a great person, and I'm going to turn 30 this March 15th. The Ides of March. Beware of Julius Caesar. Just so you know. So and last night I was listening to your show, and I don't usually listen live, but I was listening to the archive show, and you said if you guys went around with a bus and a bullhorn, that's all you could do. That's all you could do, and I guarantee you, everywhere you went, it would sell out because I'd be there, no doubt.
Cool. Yeah. We wonder as we look at these regulations, the takeover of the internet. Are we going to be? We know that we're going to continue our role as watchmen as long as we serve at the pleasure of our God. So until it's what can I tell you? Whatever means it takes, whatever.
Well, Doug, I just want to say, like, you go to the White Known Remington Conference in Montana and the Orlando Conference. You guys go to so many things, and I wish I could be there to see you guys go through it, because you truly are like the lost uncle I never had, who became my father, who speaks truth in my heart, at least. And Joe, you're feel like the big brother I never had, and I just want to say I love you guys so much. And the other thing I wanted to say was about the CISPA and PIPA bill, because Alex Jones' channel is actually experiencing a lot of attacks right now. The Ron Jur, the main thing I listen to Alex Jones has been taken down, and I found it actually another channel to listen to him today. And I haven't actually listened to the show, but people need to support these alternative media. I don't care if it's you guys or Alex Jones or whatever. I mean, we're all in this fight together, whatever it's speaking the truth. And I don't like this egalitarian takeover. What is it really called? It's like control over everything we do. So it's a complete hive mind, the Borg, plug in control. And that's the third thing I want to talk about. It's a satanic thing. I started looking into you guys when I first heard you off of YouTube, was the Mother of Darkness Castle in Belgium, Germany. And they actually do ritualistic child sacrifices. And the people of Belgium don't seem to really care too much because their kids are being taken away and their livelihood has been demolished. And in the name of Jesus, I believe this castle the walls should be seized, and their drawbridge should be ready for a takeover, because our pitchforks and our torches should be there saying no more babies being slaughtered in your basement. I don't care what it is. I mean, it's like abortions. You guys talk about abortions the whole, And Doug,
you know what, Charles, a lot of people don't believe that actually is taking place, and it is. And and I commend you for not just knowing this, but for conveying this, what's taking place. But a lot of people are saying, "Oh, come on, that can't possibly be happening," but it is. The satanic element here, and Russ Dizdar on Monday will be talking about this very issue. So I urge you to tune in. But yeah, it's happening, and where's the outrage for that? Well, you've got to get people to understand what's taking place first, and I'm glad you brought that up. Man, it's horrible.
Well, thank you, Doug, because I will be listening on Monday and every day, because I think you guys are really my family, and everything I hear from you guys rings the truth to me. I love the fact that you're investigators, and you're the only investigative journalism this side of the Mississippi for me. I mean, I can't trust CNN and MSNBC, and the reason I say, Doug, that you're my father is because my own mother and father listen to CNN and MSNBC and still think of it as truth, where most of it is lies, and it takes like a certain spiritual discernment just to see that, well, okay, the government's going to lie to you no matter what. The mainstream media is...
Yeah, but you know what? Don't give up on mom and dad. It's our generation, I suppose, the older generation. There's a level of fatigue there, and of course there's a level of indoctrination, some more than others, but keep working on them and do it with love, and tell them, look, I just care about you, and hey, there's another truth out there. But the hardest people to convince are the very people who are the closest to you.
Exactly, and I've heard you say that time and time again, and it just warms my heart. And also, I wanted to say that I'm not going to lose faith in them, and I'm also going to listen to you guys and Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford and Tom Horn, and all you guys are great. And
appreciate that.
Happy birthday and all that stuff. Happy Valentine's Day to you guys. And I know it kind of means crazy stuff too, but you guys are like my extended family. I just want to let you know that I don't listen to a lot of live shows, but I feel like calling in tonight, just let you know, if you guys want to drive around with the bullhorn and bust Joe, I'll be there to listen to you if you guys ever want to come through Iowa.
All right, we might just do that. God
there you go, brother.
All right, man.
All right,
thank
you so much. Have a good night.
Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Joe, we've got I'm telling you, man, the best listening, the most educated listening audience, and we do.
We got 30 minutes left. Let's get to more of these calls. 708 for coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for taking my call. I just wanted to mention two things. There is a YouTube movie out there in 27 parts called Adolf Hitler, The Greatest Story Never Told.
I've heard of that video. I've not seen it. And it supposedly gives a story of Hitler in a good light. If I read the captions correctly?
it gives a story of Hitler that we have never been taught going through our education system. And if you remember, history is written by the winner, or his story. Let's put it that way.
Very good. Yes.
And it's, and this, the funny thing about it is I dated a girl that was from Siegen, Germany. She came over to this country and she'd stay for 6 months and go home. And this carried on for about 3 years until she finally went back to Germany and stayed. And her mother was in the Hitler Youth Corps, and her mother's never had anything bad to say about Hitler. And this was kind of a shock to me because this was back around 1990 I was dating her. And it was a real big shock because, that's not what I was taught. I was taught that Hitler was this evil person and he killed everybody, and it's not so. And the worst of the group of the Allies, and I want you to stop and think about this for a minute. FDR picked Joseph Stalin, or Uncle Joe, as an ally to go along with him and Churchill. We had no reason to ever get in that war except for Pearl Harbor. And that's what launched it off. And FDR knew 2 weeks in advance that Pearl Harbor was going to happen. He knew that the Japanese fleet was sailing towards Pearl because he was warned by Churchill.
Right.
And he did nothing about it. He stood back and he let thousands of people die. And this was just because he had promised his second cousin, Churchill, that he would get involved in the war. And what was the vote at the time? About 87% of the American people at the time said they definitely didn't want anything to do with the Second World War. And this is what's been happening throughout the history. Is we were lied to and we go into war. 9/11 got us into Afghanistan, and Bush had on his desk at the time, he had the invasion orders for 44,000 U.S. troops to go into Afghanistan prior to 9/11. They just weren't signed.
Okay, that is true. Yes, that's true. Now, let me just stop you here, because in case listeners are starting to beat their heads on their dashboards or on their computer screens when you talk about Hitler, we have to understand. Now, Hitler was not a good man, okay? However, he was controlled, and we have to look, and I just want to make this clear, because you start getting into some murky, very, very touchy waters here. The funding of Hitler and the Nazi movement has never been really fully exposed in depth in the mainstream. But when you start looking at Hitler's personal finances, and start getting into who backed Hitler and what the motives were. Think back in 1919, Krupp, KRUPP, they were already giving financial aid to the political groups that really brought forth the present, or that particular Nazi ideology. Then you've got, and I can go on and on and on. If you go back to even the 1924 Munich trial, at the time, a ton of money was given to Hitler by Nuremberg industrialists, and you have to study this in the bigger sense. Look at the German involvement in the Bolshevik Revolution. You got to know history, and because a lot of times people will listen to what you just said and immediately tune you out and say, "Man, now you're going to be, they're going to say you're denying the Holocaust, for example." But look at the Harriman Company in New York. Follow the money. But, so I just want to make that clear. Did I do okay, or did I put words in your mouth that shouldn't be there?
No, I think you did pretty good with that. And if you go back prior to the Civil War, I want to say about 1840 in this country, the overthrow of the German government, which failed. I don't know if you realize this or not, but about 500,000 ethnic Germans came over here, and they offered their services to the Union Army. I don't know if you ever read anything about that.
Okay. Yeah, but yes, I've heard about the influx of the settlements of Germans in the north but not in the context to which you're talking. Perhaps is that from the YouTube series, or is this?
No, this from another source. This goes back, and I learned about that where the Union Army was definitely struggling against the Confederates, and all of a sudden they got this influx of 500,000 ethnic Germans to join up with them.
Actually, you know what? That's right. That was mentioned in the book about Abraham Lincoln. Sorry about that. Yeah, Lincoln, either Lincoln Unmasked or the other Lincoln book did reference the influx of Germans. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, and just one other thing I wanted to add, other than that 27-part series, and it is 6 hours long. But if you watch it in maybe 1 or 2 parts, or they're 15-minute parts, if you watch it 1 or 2 a day, you can finish it off in 10, 12 days easily enough. But I just recently learned something about the Ku Klux Klan. The KKK was started up in the South by people that were basically what the KKK did was they went and took care of the widows of the Confederates that died in the Army after they were raped and tortured and murdered and burned out and everything else like that by the Republic North, or the Union North, I should say. I don't know if you ever heard anything about that. And another interesting thing about KKK is the 11th letter times 3 is 33. I don't know if that means anything with maybe going back to what you covered in the first hour.
Never heard that before. That's pretty interesting.
Well, there have been publications, for example, Global Research, Sherwood Ross being one, about the CIA, the KKK, their involvement. I mean, covert action roles by the CIA, and the congressional legitimacy almost of the Ku Klux Klan as an arm of the CIA to operate globally. Now you've really got, I mean, you're getting into some really deep subjects here. Okay, and boy, I tip my hat to your well-researched foundation here. Now, we're not endorsing that YouTube video. We haven't seen it. We just want to say, look, there's a lot of information out there. So, I mean, certainly we'll take a look at this. What is the name of that, once again?
Adolf Hitler, The Greatest Story Never Told. And when I first started to watch it about 2 years ago, there was only 15 parts, and I just recently watched it on Christmas Eve and Christmas. And it was up to 27 parts, and I believe it is an ongoing part. They keep adding parts as they keep getting more and more information, and they're digging this information out by talking to people, getting old literature that supposedly has been misplaced or burned. And something else I just wanted to add real quick, too, is, over in Europe right now, you can go to jail for several years and pay a $10,000 fine if you deny the Holocaust ever happened.
Oh, right. But now, do you deny the Holocaust ever happened?
I deny the Holocaust happened in the numbers that they're telling us at 6 million, because if you go back all the way back to 1906, you'll see references talking about 6 million Jews are being impoverished, or 6 million, and this goes all the way through until 1936, if I'm not mistaken, 1935.
Does the YouTube video deny the numbers and the Holocaust?
It does deny the numbers, and it also says that the numbers were not Jews. And I'll be honest with you, if you look back into IBM's taking notes on everybody and their wealth and everything else like that, and if you were going to kill that many people, you wouldn't go through all the trouble of taking all of that information and just to take them out. I mean, you got to be honest about that. And then you look at this situation where Hitler did everything he could just to get him out of his country.
Well, that I agree with. Hitler did send, or did for a period. And now we're entering into some really touchy areas here. When I say touchy, I'm talking about we have to be very careful with how we have to be very precise in our statements. For example, Roosevelt had turned away a boat, a ship full of Jews, okay, and ultimately they perished in concentration camps. I will say this: if a person denies the Holocaust, I've got a real problem with that, because the evidence, the actual evidence, and tell me, I mean, how can you refute the bodies, the camps, Auschwitz, that whole system of extermination that was found, that was documented? How can you refute that? You can't. I mean,
well, the part I can refute about Auschwitz is that even people that were there said that there were changes the next time they went back when they were free and everything else. I'm talking recently. And they said certain things that were there were not there when they were there back 80 years ago.
All right. Well, interesting. We'll leave it up to the individuals, their own research. But I got to tell you, now again, with all due respect, intellectual level here, we that's fine. You've made your point. I do have a problem because I do believe that history and direct evidence it does show the victims of the Holocaust were in fact Jews. Now, however, there's complicity here. In addition to Hitler, there's complicity by others, including but not limited to the United States, well, the Allies, with respect to the funding that led to the extermination of the Jews. That's not talked about. But when we get into Holocaust denial or even the minimization of the numbers, oh man, I got a problem with that. But look, I want to thank you so much for your call. We got to move on. Yeah. God bless you, man. And you know what? We'll check out that video. All right,
have a great night. We're going to go next to area code 443. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, guys. Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Doing good. It's Mom June's granddaughter again.
Hey.
Good to hear from you.
I guess I'll use my real name. I'm Jessica.
Jessica. It is great to hear from you.
Nice to hear from you. Hey, I just wanted to get a little bit more insight from you guys about the numerology that you guys speak of with regards to the Illuminati, because for the past couple of years I have researched it, so I do know a lot of the numbers out there are significant, but the only thing I've understood is that the numbers are used to send a message, but what messages are being conveyed through those numbers?
That's a great question. And occultists worship, there are numbers that occultists use, for example. Go ahead, John.
Your question is something I often wonder myself. I understand, the when people put together the numbers, and it does have some sort of it's not by accident, and they're being used, and they're symbolic to certain people who understand them, but I have no clue as to what they should mean or how I should read them.
Well, if I can attempt to answer this question, because I think this would take a lengthy entire program to really discuss, but there's a process of divination that's specifically prohibited by God in the Bible. For example, Deuteronomy 18 talks about this, but once everyone understands, for example, how Satanists, Luciferians, how they think, how they reason, we can see the occultism with respect to numbers in world events. And the King James version of the Bible is being used as a template in order to usher in this new world order and the Antichrist. It's being used by the Satanists and Luciferians. In fact, it's being used to the letter. Okay. Now, having said that, if you look at the numbers, once you understand how the Satanists think and calculate, that's the key here. And you have to recognize for example, the sacred numbers or the numbers that they consider to be sacred. But how they figure into world events, it's kind of like an inside baseball kind of thing, or it's an inside way of communicating that if you, boy, how can I even describe this in a paragraph? If you look at, for example, the numbers we went over initially, the 19.5, the 33, all of these numbers are sacred to the Luciferians. So that kind of it kind of sends off a flare in the media because there's so much out there. But when you see, for example, 19.5 million fake Twitter followers, as we saw about a year ago, roughly, that is really a signal for the Illuminati, the Satanists, to pay attention, not necessarily to that number or what the article is actually represents, but hey, that's a signal to something else. That's a signal that okay, maybe that's a signal to for some operational. Maybe it's an operational signal, or maybe it's it depends. We don't have their entire playbook. We have parts of it. So to answer your question fully, I don't think you can. But when you look at all of the numbers when the occult symbolism and numerology with 9/11, as compared to what the occultists believe are the sacred numbers, 9, because it's the cube or the first cube of 3, for example, or I think I said that correctly, but and 11 multiplied by 3, for example, is 33, which is a number of just a tremendous occult significance. So, did I help you at all, or am I just confusing you more?
No, you're not confusing me more. Let me say, I definitely see the trend. The trend is there. I'm not denying that by any means. I've definitely seen it. The only thing I can think, from my perspective is maybe it is, what's the best way to explain it? Like almost like a confirmation code to say, this is, Lucifer has ordained this. Do you know what I mean? This action was ordained by Lucifer. Amongst each other, that's the only thing I can think of. Or
I like that. Yeah. It's almost a signature too. It acts as a signature. Look at the assassination of Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. The numbers there. November is the 11th month. 11, of course, is a very important number. 22.
Right.
11 and 22 are sacred primary cult numbers.
Equals 33. Yeah.
That's true. Yes, and he was assassinated in the public square, which was a former home to a Masonic lodge that had an obelisk in its center. So it's kind of like a signature on a painting, a very vile painting, but nonetheless a signature. So a confirmation. You're exactly correct when you say that.
Okay. All right, that makes sense to me then, because I've been pondering over it, and I just I didn't know if there was something even deeper than that. And I think even on my last call I mentioned that, every signal or every symbol seems to have multiple layers to it.
It does.
And there might be deeper than that, but that makes sense, at least from that perspective. I can see why those numbers are significant, because I can never explain that to somebody else who's not already aware of what's going on. So
and boy, I'm right there with you.
Starting point.
And it's very difficult to talk. It's almost as if when we don't have the entire playbook, or we don't we don't have that level of understanding, or we don't know with 100% certainty or accuracy what they represent, it's difficult for us to explain. But when we see these numbers, it's a good indication for us to start paying attention, at least pay attention to what's going on. And if we use that as a litmus test, or that as a starting point, that it's kind of like I said, the signature or a coded message. And also, and I don't want to stray too far from your topic, but look at the hand signals, the hand gestures, the horns, you know what I'm saying? There is this level of layered communication that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
But we better start paying attention to. But so anyway,
right.
Yeah. So
somebody who's very good to follow. I don't know if you guys are in any way affiliated with him, but I've seen his videos on YouTube. Is William Schnoebelen?
Oh yeah, Will Schnoebelen. Yep.
Yeah,
we know
he is very knowledgeable about the symbols. Oh, good.
So I mean,
okay.
He's up in years now, but he was heavily involved in the occult.
Yes.
And yes, he's got quite a story to tell. So, and I've got
yes, he does.
actually, author Maria Canise of Prepare for Persecution had sent me a couple of his books. So yes, yeah, but I'm not sure of his teachings now. But thank you.
Okay.
Is that your son?
That is my daughter. Yeah.
Oh well, she can talk.
She can. She's 3 years old, and she talks like she's about 5. So
it sounds like a very cute girl.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for your time. I really just wanted to cover that. If you guys ever get a chance, it would be wonderful if you guys could do an episode that just kind of goes over some of those symbols and some of those numbers. Just kind of dedicate an episode towards that, if possible.
We will do so. As a matter of fact, the long-awaited syllabus for the our Hagmann and Hagmann University of Conspiracy Fact and History, that is a very important part of it. And of course, we have not put it up yet, but we're working on putting that up. But that's going to be a big part of it, is the significance of occult numerology and understanding that. But going into that, we've got 5 or 6 books that explain all of this and from different angles, and so it was quite frankly, it was a bigger project than we ever thought it would be. But we will dedicate a show to that in your honor.
Awesome.
Too, that.
Thank you. Hey, I just wanted to tell you real quick. I know you got to go to somebody else soon, but the caller who mentioned the KKK and the number 33, I did hear of that before. But also, if you look at the number 11, it looks like a Roman numeral 2, and if you have 2, then 2, then 2, that equals 6. So that's a second reason why KKK might hold some significance.
Yeah, and there's a lot. Thank you for that. There is a lot of significance, a lot of dark history with the KKK. That's not, that overlaps into occult numerology and a very rich history. And I'm not glamorizing it at all, but a rich history or a very deep history that is never talked about. But thank you very much for that. All right, God bless, and give your daughter a hug.
God bless.
All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Wow. Very good calls tonight, Joe. I'm telling you.
Man. We got 5 minutes left. We're going to take one last caller to close this out. Who's been holding the longest? Goodness, I hate to have to do this, but we're going to pick one. We're going to just go with area code 405. 405, you're our last caller for the evening. What's on your mind tonight? I dashed the phone.
Hey. That's you.
Hi, guys. Haven't talked in a long time.
Well, I know.
Wow. Hey, I just wanted to say, you asked if you think people could get it together. I think the public should be really outraged. I really do. I feel like, we've been raped and we've been pillaged and we've been left for dead. And if you look at what Dimitri Duduman said, about how, they plan to nuke our coast, let's say, if you look at that whole line, it would be like we would be contained, because our shores, all along the shores, would be wastelands and just left. We'd only have to go. We'd only be able to go inland to them. where they have moved everything. They've moved all their corporates over into Europe, where they can continue to rape and pillage, whereas they've already got everything from us. So, and the whole thing is that their biggest fear that we're such terrorists is that we might wake up and get upset about what they've done, which, but, we have the Lord on our side, and, David and Goliath. I mean, I think, if the public woke up and looked at what's been done and, and before they got, too hungry and destitute and we got the Lord on our side and with God nothing is impossible. So
Amen. You are so right. Well, thank you. Boy, it's good to hear from you. We really appreciate your call, and I want to say God bless you. We're getting short on time. Thanks for the call.
We love you too. And
God bless.
Thanks for the fantastic call and the support and the prayers, and that goes for just this last caller and for all the audience out there listening, whether in interactive chat, emailing us, sending us letters, praying for us privately. It is all so much appreciated, as I said in many emails this week, and it's appreciated more than we can express in words.
Joe, this has been perhaps one of the most trying weeks.
It's been a long week.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm looking forward to surgery next week.
Yeah, looking forward to the anesthesia, right? Let's close by saying this. John Adams said this: there is danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no man living with power to endanger the public liberty.
Mm-hmm.
So few words, such great impact. Folks, next week, Monday,
Russ Dizdar.
And
Steve and Tim Alberino on Wednesday.
That's
Jonathan Kahn Thursday. Dan Goodwin Friday.
And Stan on Tuesday, of course. Just want to say God bless to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for standing with us. We so appreciate that. And, it's just this week we're going to catch up on, or I'm going to be catching up on emails and some letters and such. But those in the north, stay warm. Those all across the country.
What about us in the Arctic?
Faithful. In the Arctic, right. And worldwide, we just want to say God bless and thanks for standing with us and being part of our extended family. We really appreciate it.
God bless you all. Have a great weekend.